was a young boy. They brought him to the hospital, and he crawled up the wall in front of cops and doctors. Yeah, it happens. This is recent. We're not talking about something that happened back in the 18th century.
This is Ralph Sarchie, a former NYPD police sergeant who has witnessed dozens of exorcisms.
It was either going to be an intellectual exorcism or it was going to be a dirty one. It's more of a battle of wills than anything else.
And today he will reveal the most disturbing stories of real satanic exorcisms that he was a part of.
And that's when I got the demon. Told me right out, demon, and I'm coming.
Are there demons in your house? Ralph Sarchie will explain how you can tell if you're being haunted by the demonic.
The demonic will start to act violently. You don't get that in the infestation stage. It's very subtle. The first thing I'm going to do is...
And he even explains how people can unknowingly become possessed.
His daughter was in the hospital. He said, I made a deal with whatever to heal her. The kid was healed. Now it's coming for him. And they lied to me and I couldn't help them.
Ralph is an absolutely fascinating person whose life story was even adopted into the film Deliver Us from Evil. I'm not gonna lie, this episode freaked me out. I'm curious if anyone listening has had experiences with the demonic. I would love to know. Please comment below. But without further ado, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ralph Sarchie. So tune in, light some incense, and welcome to camp. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to camp. We are not in our normal, beautiful tent, but instead we are in the home of a very interesting, fascinating man. He's a former cop, a demonologist, and a devout Catholic. I'm here with the wonderful Sergeant Ralph Sarchie. How are you, sir?
Very nice. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much for inviting us into your home. And more importantly, we have my mother here as well. She's sitting off camera, okay? But she's not on camera for obvious reasons. So Ralph, I think the thing that I would like to know before we get into some of the specific cases, and like we had mentioned before, I want to talk about everything from aliens to hallucinogenic drugs to, I guess, the nature of evil as it exists in the world today and how demons and Satan kind of manifest in our world currently. I would like to just start at the beginning. Can you tell me briefly where you grew up and what your belief about the supernatural and the demonic was like as you were a child growing up in New York?
I grew up in a typical Italian household. You know, I went to Catholic school up to the 8th grade. And of course, I was an altar boy. You know, there was just your everyday run-of-the-mill, blue-collar existence, you know, in Queens. And back in the 60s, the 70s, it was a beautiful time to be alive.
Yeah. Did you have a strong belief in the demonic? Had you heard of exorcists in New York? Was this something that was on your radar or something that only came up later in your life?
Well, when I was a kid, I was pretty much an avid reader. You know, I read a lot. I read a lot about World War II. I read about cops and firemen, and I had an interest in spirits, ghosts. I like to read ghost stories. And, you know, being a young kid, I wasn't, you know, mentally capable of understanding the awesomeness of a demonic spirit or an angelic spirit. You know, even though as a Catholic, I had a rudimentary background, you know, in angels and the devil and demons. And over the years, in my studies, I got to realize that there is a spirit out there that is, in fact, real and evil. So, you know, I continued in my studies for many years until I got involved in it. You know.
So you joined the police academy, you become a New York City police officer, and then you hear about Ed and Lorraine Warren. Could you explain who they are and how you got in touch with them?
Well, like I said, being an avid reader and reading that type of genre, I would hear about the Warrens a lot. I read all of their books. You know, any kind of TV show that had them on, I would view it. And it got to the point where, to be honest with you, I was not that keen in getting involved in investigating this stuff. I found it frightening back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had my first daughter, Christina, and I went out shopping one day for clothes and found a book. And I read the book, and it was about a man, Maurice Dariault, from, I believe it was Massachusetts. And, it was a case that the Warrens handled, and I decided I was going to contact the Warrens at that point. And that's what I did.
And the Warrens, what kind of work were they doing? If you could explain that to people that might not know who they are.
Well, I believe back in those days, Ed Warren was probably one of the only recognized demonologists, lay demonologists in the world. And Lorraine was a psychic medium, clairvoyant. And it started out, Ed Warren was an artist. He liked to paint. So he was going around, he was painting houses that had the reputation as being haunted. And then he'd bring the painting to the house and tell the people he'd give them the painting if they would explain to him what's going on in their house. And it sort of snowballed from there. I know that at one point, Ed Warren was very close to becoming a police officer. And he put it on hold, I guess, permanently, and decided to follow the path of a demonologist.
Interesting. So now you're working as a cop. You get in touch with these folks. At this point, you're a New York City cop. You're dealing with New York City crime on a day-to-day basis, dealing with that part of law enforcement. What is the first experience you have with demonology and perhaps an exorcism that changed, I guess, your perspective, or really cemented your perspective to say that this force is completely real? And what did you see that compelled you to believe that?
Well, to tell you the truth, my first exorcism that I went to, I was not there as a curiosity seeker. I had already believed in this stuff. I had already investigated some cases and witnessed some phenomenon because I never had any phenomenon prior to getting involved in investigating cases.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't as if I grew up in a haunted house where I was witnessing these things all the time. I never saw anything, at least that I recognized. So, it was a matter of faith. My faith tells me that these beings are real. So I have to believe that they are real. And then getting involved and actually, witnessing them in action, sort of cemented everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the exorcisms, they came later on in my investigations with the Warrens. And, that's when I started to really experience how the demonic, they operate.
And what was that first exorcism that you went to?
Well, I'm talking about a solemn exorcism of a person now, or is it of a home? Because I remember the first house that I investigated, but there was no exorcism performed in the house. It was my first case. I was brand new. It was in Saugerties, New York. And it wasn't my case. It was Ed and Lorraine's case. So I'm not 100% on the details, but I could tell you what I observed. The family, they lived across the road from one another. The old man lived in one house, and the rest of the family lived across the road in the other house. And the old man was experiencing a lot of problems. What Lorraine and Ed referred to as a water poltergeist. Now, I don't like the word poltergeist. There's no such thing. But this demonic spirit tended to use water against this man. And he was a real big guy. I mean, he was over 6 feet. And he didn't speak that well English, but he was in the other house. And when we said we're going to go over, he refused to go into the house. this big dude. I'm not going. I'm not going in that house. So when we did the interview in that house, and then we went over to the Focus house, and I noticed the first thing, they had the old asbestos tiling on the ceiling, and they were stained with water all over the place, and it looked like, you know how grapes look?
Mm-hmm.
These were round circular water stains, and they looked like grapes. What was happening, the phenomena that he was complaining about, is that the water would form on the ceiling, and he could see it shimmering. And at a inopportune time, or a time that he wouldn't expect, it would just splash him. He could be sitting on the couch, it would splash him. He could walk by, it would splash him. So in the pantry was there was a space between the wall and the ceiling. And I put my flashlight in there, and I looked, and there was a layer of dust, completely undisturbed. So that meant that the water had to be coming from inside, underneath. But where was it coming from?
So you checked directly above the tiles.
I looked right in there. There was no water source coming from above that ceiling. It was coming from below the ceiling. And I don't know how that was happening in a natural manner. But anyway, it progressed into physical assaults. This man was being physically beaten. And actually, he had a very close relationship with his grandson. And his grandson spent a lot of time with him in that house because of the problems. It got so bad that they ran out of the house, the grandson and this old man. And it was assaulting the old man as he was running. It knocked his hat off the back of it. It hit him in the back of the head, knocked his hat off. He ran into the house. Windows were exploding, but they weren't exploding inward. They were exploding outward. So there was, that was the first case I went on. And it was the first time and the only time that I actually witnessed what we can call ghost rods with my own eyes.
And what is a ghost rod?
It's did you see the Demon Files?
I'm familiar with that. I didn't actually see it.
There's in the Wartrace case, we got a phenomenon. It looks like a rod. It's about this long. And I would see these things up at the ceiling area where a lot of the phenomena was taking place. And they were green and red. And I could see this with my own eyes. This wasn't something that we were seeing through video. I was seeing this. And I didn't know how rare it was, actually, because it was my first case. I've never seen that again with my own eyes. There was only one time that I saw what I call spirit energy with my own eyes, and never again after that. So it was rare.
And these rods, they seem like they're material?
Well, they're energy. It's like a light. Like a lightning bug?
Sure.
It would be something similar to that.
Interesting. And when you saw it, did you feel anything?
No,
Did it?
I didn't see it. I didn't feel anything, no.
You just saw it and you thought, oh, that's
marveling. I was looking up, and I'm saying to myself, what the hell is that?
And how many would you say there were?
I saw maybe they'd show up sporadically, like a lightning bug. They would show up, you'd see them, and then it would go away.
Now, in demonic literature and demonology, what is that ascribed to? Is there any theory as to what that is or why it's manifesting in that way?
Well, their energy. So I would have to say that is a result of the way that energy is manifesting itself. The demonic, they don't need energy from the atmosphere to manifest. They can do it of their own accord. Human spirits, on the other hand, they need an energy source. And that's why, the old, when there is you have a ghostly manifestation in the movies, it's a stormy night, the lightning and the thunder. Well, the reason for that is because of the electromagnetic energy in the air, and the moisture in the air conducts the electricity. So it makes it easier for the human spirit to gather that energy and manifest itself. It needs that source. Now, the demonic will use it if it's available, because, they'll use the energy, but they don't need it. So you'll see electricity type manifestations at times, because that's what we are. We're electricity.
Right. Like in films, typically you would see like lights flickering and things like that. That's typically like a trope you would see in, movies of demons and such. Have you seen versions of that?
They like to flicker the lights because it messes with people, but I have a funny story. I was out in California. We were having a big, a media circus, I guess, for Deliver Us from Evil. And, I was out there and I was sitting in a room. It was a large room. There was a screen, a movie screen. And there was about 3 or 4 of us in the room, a couple of reporters. And we were sitting there, we were talking, and all of a sudden, the lights just dimmed, all by themselves, into complete darkness. And then the lights went back on. And I looked over to see who was messing with the lights, and there was nobody there. And when I turned back, the reporters, they were stunned. They were ashen white. They were flipping out because of these lights just dimming and then going back on. So I asked them, I said, you folks are in here quite often. Did that ever happen before? And they're like, no, it never happened before. So I'm like, okay, don't worry about it. It happens.
I spoke with a guy. He's a friend of mine, and he was trying to get possessed. He doesn't believe in it. He's a full materialist. He says, I don't believe in the supernatural.
He's an idiot.
Sure. And he said, I'm going to try to get possessed. And so he tried. He did all these Ouija boards. He said, yeah, nothing happened. He came on my show, and as he was describing this to me, and it's on camera, I could show you the video afterwards. As we're speaking, the lights behind him, which at this point had never done this before, they don't have this setting on the lights, and it's never happened since, began to flicker. And I was like, that's pretty weird. And he was like, yeah, are you doing this as like a joke? And I was like, no, it's just a weird thing that has never happened before. So we turned the lights off, turned them back on, and then they never flickered again for the rest of the 2 hours that we spoke. And I kind of looked at that and say like, oh, that's pretty strange. In the exact moment that he was describing his desire to be possessed, all of a sudden this light's flickering. I thought that was a pretty bizarre thing to happen. And yeah, we never spoke about it since, and it just kind of lives on its own on my channel. But again, one of these experiences to say that there's a potential electromagnetic frequency that can be disrupted to kind of indicate something.
Extremely common.
Interesting. So now what happened with this gentleman's house that you were at? When you investigated it, you see the water, there's dust on top of it, he's getting assaulted. What is the next course of action to cleanse the home?
Well, like I said, it was the Warrens that handled the case. So I was not privy to, what transpired after I had left. I hope they got the help they needed. I don't know for sure.
Right.
I mean, that's just the way it was. I mean, I work with the Warrens on cases, and I would hear a year later that the case, came to fruition. I did an exorcism, and now Ed Warren would say, Ralph, do an exorcism. So I'd do an exorcism.
I see.
And then it would be like a year later, I'd hear, oh, that family out there, everything's good.
Now, could you explain the difference between a solemn exorcism and a local exorcism?
All right. Solemn exorcism is an exorcism over a person. A local exorcism is an exorcism in a house.
So with this guy's house, that would be a local exorcism.
Yes.
Now, what was the first solemn exorcism that you saw? Or perhaps not the exact first, but maybe one of the early ones.
I don't remember the first one I was at.
But one of the early ones.
If I sat here and I thought about it, but it might take me a while. We're not going to get nowhere.
Yeah, we got to feed the dogs.
I just can't, for the life of me, I cannot remember. I'm trying to put myself back because that I would be so apprehensive that it wouldn't even be funny. Because in my mind, the exorcisms was from the movie The Exorcist.
Of course.
I'm getting ready to pull him down from the ceiling and deal with the vomit and the head spinning. And then it was absolutely nothing like that.
But what would you describe it as? If you could give like a specific example from any case.
The best way that I can describe a solemn exorcism, no matter what's going on, because Father Martin, he had two terms, either an intellectual or a dirty. It was either going to be an intellectual exorcism or it was going to be a dirty one. They're anticlimactic. It's more of a battle of wills than anything else, with the exception of maybe one that's violent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're different.
Yeah,
they're very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in most of the exorcisms that I assisted in where they were extremely violent, there was no dialogue. There was very little dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It was all growling and moaning and cursing and, you know, vileness. There was no trying to outsmart your opponent.
Could you tell us a story from a violent exorcism?
Well, we had an exorcism of an old of a woman.
Mm-hmm.
All right, she had to be about probably 90 pounds, 100 at the most.
Mm-hmm.
Very tiny little petite woman. And we fought with her for 2 hours in the pew.
So what was the context leading up to this? Who had told you about the case?
This was a case that Ed and Lorraine Warren were working on. And, you know, when I started to investigate cases with them, I wound up handling a lot of the cases that they were working on, because some of them take a few years to deal with. You know, they don't just doesn't happen. It does, but it doesn't.
Right.
And she was very violent.
So you got a briefing from Ed and Lorraine, and you showed up. She was in a church?
This progressed from a it was an infestation case to a possession case. It progressed, meaning the problem started to happen in the home. You know, things getting thrown around, things disappearing, the scratches, the smells, the noises, you know, all of the things that come along with the infestation and the oppression cases. And it progressed to the point where the woman actually wound up getting possessed. I almost mentioned her name, and I try not to do that, but you know, she has passed. She passed on. And there was about 7 exorcisms for this woman.
And had you gone to her home before?
I was in her home, yes.
Okay. So is that the first time you met her?
I was now this home was it was in Connecticut, and it was built by midgets. It was a tiny house. No, seriously, it was a tiny house. And, you know, energy builds up in small spaces. So it was very difficult to be in that house because of the, you know, the atmosphere, the energy.
Really? When you walked in,
the negativity.
You could feel,
it was palpable. You could feel it when you walked into the house. And Ed said to me, actually, we were having a class that night, and the phone had rang, and Lorraine picked up the phone, and she said, "Ed, it's so-and-so, and she wants to speak with you." And he got on the phone, and he was talking, and then he got off, and he says, "Okay, I want Ralph, John, Scott, and whoever else out on the porch." So we went out on the porch. He says, "We're going over to so-and-so's house, you know, there's problems over there." So we went. Ed tells me, go up in the attic and, you know, stay there for about a half hour, you know, and observe. So I'm like, all right. So I go into the attic, and I sat there for a half hour, and nothing took place. But I find out a couple of days later that the last investigator that was up in that attic had a picture frame thrown at him, you know, And I wish Ed would have advised me that fact,
Yeah.
because I was in the dark.
Mm.
Ed liked to conduct investigations in dark, and I don't like doing that. I want to see what the hell's going on,
Yeah.
I don't want to be in darkness. I want
Yeah.
to be able to see. But,
And you were alone in the attic.
Yeah, I was there for about a half hour, and then I went downstairs, and then, we ended the investigation.
And when you saw the woman for the first time, she was friendly, amicable.
Yeah, dogs in the house, husband, daughter, very nice people.
Did they seem concerned about what was happening?
Oh, yeah.
And so they were a little freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but nothing within them that you
no, not at this point. This was still
early.
We were talking about at least an oppression at this particular point.
Got it.
But for her exorcism, she got violent, and we fought for about 2 hours with her, in that pew.
So how does it progress? How do you go from a home that, has some oppression to then violence? Like, what are the next steps?
Oh, well, she got possessed. So I'm skipping from the house to the solemn exorcism.
And how does she get possessed?
It broke her will down enough to actually possess her.
And does she invite the spirit into her?
No, she didn't invite it. No, she didn't want this. She couldn't resist it. She could do nothing to stop it from happening. I don't know why. We don't know the answers. God allows it. That's the only reason why we know is God allows it. And, when I did the demon files, a couple of times we would ask questions to the spirits in the location is what gives you the authority to attack this family? And we would hear, because I'm allowed. It's something that I knew that God allows it to happen, and it doesn't happen unless he allows it. So when I hear this spirit telling me, well, I'm doing this because I'm allowed to do it, that I understand that God has given this spirit permission to do what it's doing.
Now, are you hearing that audibly, or is it just something that comes into
Usually
your
with
mind?
our equipment, we're hearing it through recordings.
You're hearing it through recordings?
Well, we're using recordings, devices.
Oh, wow. So you have recordings of these audio transmissions saying, I'm allowed?
Yeah. Well, it was on the show, the Demon Files.
Wow. I mean, that's remarkable.
So when we went through our evidence and, my team would show me, all right, listen to this. And I'm hearing, well, it's because I'm allowed. Or who gave you the authority to attack this family? Woody, the father. It's giving me the name of the father. And then I later find out that he made a deal with whoever, according to his words.
So when you say he made a deal, did he explain what that deal was?
Well, yeah, his daughter was in the hospital dying, and he made a deal with, what he said, I made a deal with whatever to heal her. So now the kid was healed. Now it's coming for him. And they lied to me, and I couldn't help them.
So the house has this oppression, and then it builds up to more violence within the home.
Well, the demonic will start to act violently. They'll start throwing objects around, physical assaults. You don't get that in the infestation stage. It's very subtle. It's very minor, the things that happen, and it progresses depending on a lot of factors. If it's a low-level demon, it takes time for it to progress to the next stage. If it's a devil, it could progress very, very rapidly. Now, we believe that some of the people or some of the demons that possessed this woman were devils. They were powerful demons. And that's why it took such a long time to free her.
And there's a hierarchy of demons.
Yes.
And some will be lower level with less ability. And then some will be higher.
There are 9 choirs of angelic spirits. And depending on where they were within those choirs in the 3 hierarchies, depends on how much power they have. It's in their nature. they're not like us. Their being is their nature. Our nature is to be human. Their nature is totally different. Their nature is what they are.
Mm. And now, did you go back to the house prior to the violent point? Did you return back to the home and see anything?
No, I never went back to that house after the first time I was there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only time I went there. It had already progressed to a full-blown possession, genuine possession case. So whatever dealings we were having were going to be at the church, unless Bishop McKenna decided we need to be back at the house, which he's done.
Right. So for this case, you get a call one day and they say, hey, we're going to go to the church. We're going to perform this exorcism. And who was it that called you?
Well, I can get a call from one of Ed and Lorraine's investigators, or I get a call from one of the nuns from Bishop McKenna.
So now you're prepared to go into this church to perform ostensibly some type of violent exorcism. I'm assuming they told you at this point that there was some degree of severity.
Well, nobody tells you anything. You just go and you deal with whatever you deal with.
And how do you prepare to go into a church to do an exorcism like this? What is the personal preparation that you take?
What, me personally?
Yeah.
Well, when it's a solemn exorcism, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm in a state of grace, meaning I'm hitting the confessional.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the confessional once a week back in those days,
mm-hmm.
And the next thing I do is I would perform the black fast, meaning I would need at least 3 days before to prepare myself. And I would do the black fast.
And what is the black fast?
Well, the black fast is recommended in the Roman ritual for the priest to perform this fast before a solemn exorcism. And it's 1 meal a day for 3 days. And there's praying, lots of praying in between.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 1 meal a day. And then you get to the church and you prepare the person for what's to come. Put them in a straitjacket, or we're going to put them in soft restraints. And
so what time of day is this that you're going to the church?
It's in the morning.
Okay. So you arrive at the church in the morning, and who is with the woman?
Her family would bring her. Sometimes they'd show up by themselves. We didn't like that. We didn't like that if they come by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We usually like somebody to drive them because we don't know what kind of condition they're going to be in at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That woman that we were talking about ended up in a hospital after one exorcism. So, these things, they happen. She suffered a broken rib. These things, the violence was extreme, and you cannot overcome violence softly. You have to use violence in return. So she suffered a broken rib. Everything is videotaped.
Were you at that one?
I was at that one, yeah.
Okay.
Everything is videotaped.
And so these multiple exorcisms all happened in the church?
Yeah.
I see. And so when you go there, it's the family, they bring her.
Sometimes it's a family.
And then, is she ever coming on her own volition? Is she coming herself, or is she resistant?
Sometimes they do. We don't like that. We don't want somebody that is, we feel is possessed and we're going to perform an exorcism on. We don't want them to come to the church by themselves. In the same vein, I don't want to drive them to the church in my car either.
Right.
I don't want a possessed person behind me or next to me as I'm operating a vehicle on the way to an exorcism. Try to avoid that. So we prefer they have some kind of support system. It doesn't always work out that way, but it is what it is.
So then at the church, there's the exorcist and is a priest.
Yeah.
And the possessed woman, her family. Was there anyone else that was there?
Their assistants.
I see. So the exorcist assistants.
It could be one of us, or there could be 8 of us.
Depending on the circumstance.
Depending on who's available and what the circumstances are.
And now, how does it begin? How does this start, the nature of the exorcism in this specific case?
Well, in this particular case, we had no restraints. We had no soft restraints, and we had no straitjacket. I procured them. Don't ask me how, but I procured them because we needed them.
Right.
And, she's in the church. She sits in the first pew. And she might go to confession beforehand. One of the assistants might be in the confessional beforehand. I never recommended that because what I don't want is my fresh sins in that priest's head when that demon is going to be probing him to see what information he can get. So I don't want that.
Because they might know your weaknesses.
Well, they might find out what the sins I just confessed are. When I go to another priest outside, there's no way that devil is going to know the sins that I just been forgiven for. But if they're fresh in that priest's mind, he might somehow grab onto them.
And what's the concern if they know your sins? They can use that against you.
Oh yeah, they're going to blurt it out. They'll blurt it out, or they'll hone in on me and use it against me.
The possessed person can blurt it out. Oh yeah. Wow! And you've seen that happen before. Something that you said in confidence is now being blurted out by someone that would not know.
No, I've never witnessed that, but I know that it is certainly possible. But I've seen some assistants have overstepped their boundaries in their zeal, to help the person, and the demon let them know that they made a mistake.
I see.
I've seen that.
Right.
And it was in words, actually.
Wow. So she's sitting at the beginning of this pew. And does it begin with a specific type of liturgy or some type of specific prayer?
Yeah, the bishop would start the Litany of the Saints. And that's with his back facing the altar. Now that the Eucharist and the tabernacle is removed prior to anybody getting into the church.
And what's the reason for that?
Well, we don't want it, we don't want any sacrileges in front of the Holy Eucharist.
I see.
So we put it in the back.
So the Eucharist would not be used as a tool in some capacity?
It can be, and it has been.
Okay.
But in certain circumstances, and it's never exposed, it's covered.
In a monstrance.
In a monstrance. It's covered. So there could be no blasphemies directly at the Eucharist.
Because someone could try to spit on it or try to attack it.
Well, it's in a monstrance. It's covered. You're not going to get at it, but there could be verbal and, we don't even want that.
I see. So the Eucharist is removed, Liturgy of the Saints begins, and then what does the woman do at that point?
I mean, each exorcism is different, but after the Litany of the Saints, then the exorcist will come down and stand in front of the possessed and start the Roman ritual, and that's usually the St. Michael prayer. You start with the St. Michael prayer, Hail Marys. We'll throw some Hail Marys in there. They could be said throughout the exorcism. The exorcist can stop right then and there, and we're going to pray Hail Marys. We prayed a whole rosary one time. 15 decades in that church during an exorcism. So it depends on the exorcist himself, what he feels he wants to do and how he wants to proceed. Once the Roman ritual is completed in its entirety from beginning to end, then the priest can go back into certain parts of the Roman ritual if he observes a reaction that he might get from the demon during a certain part of the ritual. He'll go back and he'll repeat it.
I see.
And during the exorcism, the stole is applied around the head of the person. There are relics that are applied to the person. Holy water, blessed oil is put on the person throughout the exorcism, depending on how the exorcist feels he's going to proceed with that.
What's up, guys? Let's take a break really quick because you're nostalgic. You remember in your childhood sitting down, watching cartoons, having a big old bowl of cereal. I tried doing that now as a 28-year-old father, okay? I sat down with my little baby. I bought cereal from the store. I sat down, and I looked at the box. Immediately was like, this is the craziest thing ever. It's so sugary. I tried taking 6 bites. I felt nauseous afterwards. I mean, it's insane that I used to be able to eat this stuff as a kid. And then I found out about this company called Magic Spoon. Yes, Magic Spoon is an amazing, wholesome, high-quality alternative to some of the, cereal brands I used to eat as a little kid. I mean, they have amazing flavors. They got fruit ring circles. No idea what that could be. They have cocoa, not the P word. They got cocoa loops. And I wonder what that is. And you already know what it is, okay? And here's the crazy thing. It tastes as good and has less sugar and is actually great if you're someone that's counting carbs. If you're a carb-conscious connoisseur, Magic Spoon is a thing for you. It's absolutely amazing. It tastes great. And, I mean, in every serving, you're going to get 12 grams of protein on the go when you get the Magic Spoon cereal bars. You remember these cereal bars from when you were a kid. You would sit down, you would crush like a whole box of these. But now Magic Spoon has the alternative that is going to taste as good, if not better, with 12 grams of protein on the go. So if you're interested in trying out some Magic Spoon, specifically the cereal bars, you can probably go to Amazon or find them at a grocery store. But if you want to be frugal, you want to, save some money, use the promo code CAMP. That's right. Secret for all the people listening to this program. The promo code CAMP, C-A-M-P, when you go to magicspoon.com/camp, you're going to save $5 off your next order. So have some fun. Feel like a kid again. Sit down with your kids and enjoy a nice big old bowl of cereal without all the guilt. Let's get back to the show. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because if you're anything like me, you're probably running late. You might be running late right now listening to this podcast, all right? You're just trying to get out the door and you realized you didn't have time to have a nutritious meal. And that's why I want to talk to you about Huel, because Huel is your on-to-go complete meal in a bottle. That's right. Everything you need in this little bottle right here. We got 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals. I don't even know if that's a lot. I think it is 27 vitamins and minerals. I think testosterone is one of them because I feel amazing when I drink this. And 7 grams of fiber, all in this bottle right here. It's got everything you need to get you powered through the day, to perform better at the gym, to perform better at work, probably to perform better in your intimate time with your husband or even your wife. All I'm saying is that if you are running behind on life and you need a nutritious meal in a bottle, Huel is the way to go. It's perfectly balanced. It's got everything you need, and it tastes amazing. I mean, this one right here is like a chocolate milkshake. It's crazy. It tastes actually super good, but it's not a chocolate milkshake. It is actually all the nutrients you need to get through the day. If you're interested in trying out Huel, I have great news for you. Because listeners of this program, when they go to Huel.com, that's Huel.com, and use the promo code CAMP, you're going to be getting 15% off plus a free gift for new customers. What is that gift? I think it comes with cocaine, probably. Anyway, Huel.com, use the promo code CAMP, unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Completely nutritious meals in just a few minutes so you can focus on what really matters, all right? Being productive and listening to podcasts. Let's get back to the show. So now in this case, at what point did the woman start to get violent?
We were into the exorcism for a good bit, and then the violence starts. If I remember correctly, the first sign of violence was on herself. She tried to pull her own hair out, tearing out her flesh, so we would have to grab her hand to stop her from tearing at herself. And that would turn into her trying to pull the hand up to bite the hand that was restraining her, or trying to get at this flesh with her nails, trying to twist around. So the investigator is now moving and trying to negotiate, trying to stop getting assaulted and whatever, at the same time protecting the woman from assaulting herself. It's a little twisted. The person that's trying to assault you, you're trying to prevent from assaulting herself. It's a little, it's not natural.
Right.
But that's, and that was about 2 hours worth of that fight with her.
And now, was she saying anything? Is there any type of auditory moment?
And there's a lot of yelling, laughing, mocking, a lot of gibberish, a lot of crap. They pull this kind of stuff. You look at them and they behave in a manner that is very childish. The behavior is very childish. And they do that a lot. It's a psychological ploy, is to try to, there's no demons here. This person's nuts. No demon would behave like this,
Right.
those kinds of ploys. And it's a good exorcist that nips that in the bud. That's the pretense. Once that pretense is destroyed, then there's no more of that.
I see. Now, a skeptic might listen and say, oh, perhaps this woman has, a mental health disorder. They might have some type of, bipolar schizophrenia where they're hearing things and they're acting in a way that's abnormal. How can an exorcist discern whether someone is having a mental episode or a proper possession?
Well, they're going to go through an extensive psychiatric background along with a medical background that's required.
With some type of board certified psychologist.
Well, we're gonna check to see if there's any kind of mental illness or history in the family. We're gonna look into these things.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that a person who is mentally ill, they don't know they're mentally ill, and they're mentally ill all the time. A person who's possessed goes through periods of normalcy, meaning the demon might be present 24 hours a day. It might not be present 24 hours a day. The possession is not 24 hours a day. There are periods of normalcy within this. The person knows that there's something wrong. They might not understand it, but they know that there's something wrong.
I see. So in the periods of normalcy, they could reflect on the moments of possession.
They're looking for help.
What's
wrong with me? Mr. Sarchie, you're not gonna believe me, but that kind of stuff. And then there are other people that go into possession and they black out for hours, sometimes days. They don't remember what they've done. So we're relying on the family members, the people around them. What was going on? Well, they weren't acting like, Frank was not acting like Frank. Frank was acting like a babbling idiot, like a fool.
Right.
These kinds of things.
Now, you're saying that the woman is laughing, she's kind of yelling, she's convulsing, trying to fight, the people restraining her. Have you ever seen moments where the possessed would say things that are in other languages, or maybe say things that seem like a language that you've never heard before?
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah, we've taken great pains to try to track down the origins of these languages. We would use, linguistics professors to listen to these, the tapes that we have to try and give us some kind of an idea on what we're listening to. There was one, we don't know what the language was, and we believe that it was one of these Afro-Caribbean curses put on this particular person. And this voice or wording that was coming from her, we don't know what language it was. Like I said, we would look into it, but I'd even go to the deli with the Indian guys and say, "Hey, listen to this. Tell me if you recognize what this is."
Interesting. And does it ever sound like not their voice?
Sometimes it would be different. It would be a different octave. It happens, but not a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Because it's still ultimately possessing their body. It's their vocal cords. It wouldn't be.
It's not beneficial to them to utilize their own vocal cords or utilize their own voice, even though they don't have a voice box. They do it sometimes. Sometimes they'll growl. This guttural growl coming from these people. It's usually when the priest is putting a relic on them or using holy water, a sacramental, the reaction, like Bishop McKenna would hold a crucifix up in front of this woman and say, "It is Christ crucified that commands you," and the demon would laugh. And then the bishop would put the relic of the true cross on the breastplate, and that laughter would turn into growling or moaning or yelling. So you're fluctuating 1 minute from laughing to the next minute to growling or yelling or cursing or some abnormal crap.
Right. Now, as a police officer in New York City, you've had no shortage of restraints. I'm sure you've had to restrain people of all different sizes. And I'm sure you perhaps had to restrain a 90-pound woman before. Did you feel like this woman you were restraining had a strength beyond what you had experienced in the past?
Well, it was definitely a strength that she shouldn't have had. That's for sure. But it was different. When I'm restraining a bad guy, I'm hitting, tearing, ripping, punching, kicking. Over here, I'm not doing any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to control this person with the least amount of force that I could possibly use. I don't want to break this lady's bones. You know, I really don't want to do that.
Right.
In the same vein, I don't want to get punched in the face either.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But so you try to balance it. But she had strength that she should not have had.
Mm-hmm. And now, how long does this specific exorcism go on for, and how does it end?
This particular one was about 2 hours. And I was assisted at another one of her exorcisms that was about an hour and a half around that time. And there were only 3 of us during that exorcism. So I spent that whole time crouched on the pew, holding her wrist with both my hands to keep her arm as immobilized as possible, you know, all the while trying to stay away from her, lunging at me, trying to bite me.
Wow.
And I had to put all my weight on that to keep her arm immobile.
And then how does it end?
Bishop stops.
Okay.
And the demon retreats. They leave. As soon as we're done, they leave. They don't want to be there. They have to be there. And when they don't have to be there, they're no longer there. They go.
And then this woman specifically came back to her cognizant mind?
It was not a successful one. Those, you know, the people usually tell us it's gone. You know, they'll tell us it's gone. I don't feel it anymore. It's not there. You know, they know. And other people, it's just, we have no idea.
So now what ended up happening with this woman? She had 7 exorcisms, and how does her
eventually
story?
She was freed.
Oh, really? Were you at the exorcism where she was freed?
No, I wasn't at her final exorcisms, no.
Wow. And what did the husband think of all this, knowing that he had sort of made this deal? Did he communicate anything? Did he feel guilt?
Her husband?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was a badass.
What do you mean?
Well, when the news found out about this, they were camping out on her lawn. So he came out with a shotgun and put a couple of rounds in the air and chased them off of his property.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
He just, unfortunately, he wasn't prepared to deal with demons.
Right. And I guess that is the concern if you sort of invoke anything to help you. You know, broadly speaking, if you're saying, is anything listening, you know, help me with this specific issue that I'm having, you can invite, you know, negative spirits or demons into your life.
Well, I couldn't understand, and I did question him. I didn't have a really good rapport with this gentleman that you're referring to because of their lying to me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't exactly the way I wanted to walk away from that case with those little kids in it. But I asked him, wouldn't you pray to God? He says, I prayed to anything that was out there. That was his response. Well, there was something out there, and it hurt him. And his case didn't come to fruition. He still has his problem. I didn't perform an exorcism in his house.
So did you know this to be a fact, or are you presuming that he still has an issue?
Well, I know it.
Oh, really?
I know it.
And so in the home, there's still problems.
Yeah, of course.
Manifesting
it's not gonna go away by itself.
I see. And he didn't want to have some type of exorcism for him.
No, he lied. They lied to me, so I didn't proceed.
And do you know what happened to them as of today? Do you know what wow.
They're angry with me.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
As a matter of fact, I got a phone call from Dr. Phil's producer one day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got contacted by these people. I says, I'll come on your show. I said, but I want the other 2 families to come on also. Not just them. Let's have them all on. you know?
The whole family,
Everybody.
Mhm.
You know, I did 3 cases for Destination America. I said, let's have the other 2 families on. I helped them.
Mhm.
You know, why are you just going to have the family that, you know, we didn't get along? Have everybody on.
I see.
But there was we weren't going to continue with the Demon Files, and I knew it at this point. So I said, we're done. I'm not giving this family any more of my time.
Mhm.
If we would have continued with the show, I would have said, Dr. Phil, book it. I would have been on his show with bells on. You know, there would have been great marketing for the show, you know, and I would have done it. But to go on a show to talk with these knuckleheads, there's no upside.
Right. What was the other case, or the other 2 cases that were more successful where it worked out with the Demon File specifically? Can you take us through the beats of some of the other cases?
Well, you have the Wartrace, Tennessee case. I just talked to Cindy the other day.
And what happened in that case?
Well, there was situations that I'm not going to go into.
Sure.
All right. People have to understand that there is no magic wand that gets these demons away from you. It takes faith, and it takes a relationship with God in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a problem, God allowed it for whatever reasons. And if you receive help for it, then you have to take responsibility for your life, and you really need to change things.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be responsible enough to keep these things away from you now.
Right.
Because in Scripture it says that when a demon is cast out, it'll roam the earth, and then it'll go back to its home to find it all swept and clean. And this time it'll come back with 7 more powerful than itself. Basically, what that is referring to, demonic possession. But it pertains to homes also. Meaning that if a demonic spirit is cast out and you don't change your lifestyle around, then it's going to come back, and it's going to come back worse on you. So when people don't do this, their problems continue.
It's like rehab. You know, you might get clean from a drug, but if you don't live a life of sobriety,
right,
you can become addicted again.
That's right.
I see.
That's right. And meaning, all you do is you go hang out with people who are using that drug again.
Right.
And chances are you're going to wind up using it again. So you come out, you go somewhere else, and you live your life there, and chances are you won't have that habit. It's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm. So what can you share from the Tennessee case? What did you hear prior to, and when you showed up, what was happening?
Well, the Tennessee case it had a history. There was a lot of negativity in that house. There's also word that one of Al Capone's gang owned the house because there was a train that went right in front of the house. So it was great for bootlegging.
I see.
We heard might have been a couple of mob hits in the house. There was a couple of domestic violent murders in the house. There was a history of drug use. A lot of bad stuff. And the house was located in a very, very bad spot as far as electromagnetic energy is concerned. You had power lines, you had a stream, and you had railroad tracks, and the house is right in the center of it. All of those things conduct electricity. So you had a swirl of electricity around this property, which gives it the prime, situation for spirit activity. There is a lot of human spirit activity in this house, but there was a lot of demonic spirit in it also. And it was a fascinating situation with the family that moved into it. The young daughter, Lily, she has ability. I believe she was 11 years old. She has ability to see spirits. And she told her family there's spirits here. She called them shadow people.
And what did she see? Do you?
She saw shadows.
I see.
And they didn't believe her, and they moved in, and then things started to happen to the family, and then they did believe her. They were starting to get scratched and pushed around. Things were moving. If I remember all the things happening in that house, growling in her ear. That happened while we were there, actually. She went outside and this thing growled in her ear. I told her, don't go outside, stay in the house here. I don't want to, don't go anywhere by yourself. And I did an exorcism in the house, and we got a lot of evidence. We got a lot of voice, a lot of. I don't use those things that these paranormal investigators use, like these REM pods and electronic equipment. I only used a tape recorder and a video camera. That's it. I never used any other stuff. But I got guys on my team that brought these instruments in, and I utilized them for the show, and they worked pretty good as far as I'm concerned. We picked up a lot of evidence, a lot of EVPs that were Class A, direct, to a question. Very, very consistent with the history of the house. So it was a very good investigation.
Do you have a specific example? What was something that was asked that then was answered?
Well, there was, we had heard that somebody had gone to that railroad track and either hung themselves or jumped off the trestle. So we went to the railroad track, and we started to pose some questions, and the name that we got was Eddie. Who killed themselves on the railroad tracks? Eddie. We did this about 3 or 4 times and got 3 or 4 Eddies. That doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is a receiver that's being manipulated at a high rate of speed. So the frequencies are going very rapidly, and these spirits are able to utilize the energy from the frequency to speak through it. Mm-hmm. I don't know how this stuff works. Like I said, I don't use this stuff, so I didn't know. And Eddie, so we go back, got some information about the porch area, that somebody might have died on the porch. And that's when I got the demon. It said it was a demon. It told me right out, demon, and I'm coming. That's what it said. So when we went in the house and we asked Cindy, did anybody ever commit suicide by on the train tracks? She says, oh yeah, that was Eddie. He walked he worked in the barn. He came from the barn over the lawn onto the train tracks, and he jumped off. All right. So, we got a Class A EVP. Eddie. Why did we get that as many times as we did?
Now, Cindy was the woman living in the house?
She owned the house, yes.
I see. So now what happened in the house, and how were the demons expelled from the domicile?
Well, I believe there was at least one demon in that house. I can't be 100% sure, but I believe there was one demon. And I did an exorcism in the house. From the basement, I started in the basement and went up to the attic. That's where I believe this demon entered, through the attic.
And what makes you think it came through the attic?
The girl, Lily, that was her bedroom. And she was the focal person. And I just believe that this thing entered the house through the attic. I don't know how I feel that, but that's what I believed. Mm-hmm. It came in through the attic upstairs.
Now, you explained the process of doing a solemn exorcism. What is the process for a local exorcism?
Well, I would use sacramentals. I would have blessed incense. I have my holy water and my blessed salt. And I would have the incense burned throughout the whole entire house. You know, I had plenty of thuribles, senses, and I give them all to my investigators, and they would go and put them in all the rooms. And
is there a specific scent or a specific incense that
I use frankincense and myrrh? It's high church incense. Mm-hmm. It's the same incense that the church uses in in our rituals.
Of course.
I would burn that, and I would leave that for a while. I'd probably have the rosary playing in the background on a tape, and I would just let that sit. A lot of times we would just go outside and hang out and let the incense filter through the house. And then I'd come in and I would get my Relic of the True Cross, and I would start the Pope Leo XIII prayer. We have a modified version of that prayer.
And
I would pray that. What I normally do is I would have investigators on every floor, if it's a floor dwelling. And I'd have one team praying the exorcism prayers on the second floor, another one in the attic, one in the basement, if I had enough people, and I'd have it simultaneously. But if I was the only one doing the ritual, I would start in the location that I would feel was opposite the portal and drive everything towards that. Sometimes I feel the portal is in the basement.
And go the other way.
Yeah. And I'd start in the attic and go down.
Now, in doing local exorcisms on a home, does anything happen during the exorcism? Like in the way that a woman, in this specific case, this woman was growling, she was writhing. Does the house do anything strange? Does anything happen in the home that is bizarre or unusual?
Yeah, sometimes I'll get something, knocked around, an object. Sometimes I'll hear a noise, a bang. It's all minor. It's all low level stuff. You got to understand something. A house, an infestation of a house is like Universal Studios compared to a solemn exorcism. It's like an amusement park ride.
I see.
They're totally different.
Mm-hmm.
That's why laymen are not supposed to do solemn exorcisms.
I see. But a local exorcism is, would you say the demons are less powerful?
Well, it's different. I wouldn't say they're less powerful. It's just different. You're dealing with them on a different level. We're dealing with a house when you really look at it,
right? Compared
to a human being.
I see. So in this case, no human actually got possessed. It was just the home.
It was just the home.
I see.
There were no possessions in any of these cases.
Now, in your book, you detail a case where a woman was interfacing with a ghost that she would see. This is in the first chapter. The woman that she would see in the mirror, I believe her name was Virginia. Can you explain that case specifically? And I think it's important to go through that to kind of illustrate, I guess, how things can seem benign or perhaps, almost charming in a way, and then lead to more, evil behavior. So what was this case, and how did this possession go from something, almost Hollywood-esque into something more evil?
Well, it's the typical con game, how we spoke before about how some psychopaths can appear very charming. It's the game. It's how they operate. Demonic have the same type of thing. They have an MO. They operate in a certain manner. I'm a big fan of the FBI's profiling, criminal profiling. I found it fascinating. And, I was able to apply it to the demonic. Mm-hmm. They have a nature. So you have a nature of some demonic, they're what I consider the brutes. They're attacking in an animalistic way. There's no conversation. It's all violence. It's, you know, it seems meaningless, actually, you know. Then you have the intellect, or the intellectuals, like the way Father Martin, it's designated exorcisms, the intellectual exorcism versus the dirty.
Mm-hmm.
You can bet that you're dealing with the, you know, the beast in the dirty ones, and you're dealing more with the intellectuals when you're having a conversation.
I see.
Which makes the battle more a battle of wills. It's not a physical battle. Just like the battle between Saint Michael, the archangel, and the good angels against Lucifer and the rebellious angels was not a physical battle. It was a battle of wills. They're not physical beings. How can you have a physical battle if they're not physical? So you apply that same, you know, that same theory to the exorcism is a battle of wills.
So this specific case with this Virginia ghost that you
This
said
was a con man.
that intellectual.
The next one will be the con man. That's how they operate. They operate on the con. And that's exactly what we were dealing with here.
So take us through the whole story. What does this woman start seeing?
Well, I mean, it's incredible. This woman, she goes and she lays down. She wasn't feeling well. She lays down and sees an apparition from the waist up, which is the first tip off for me, you know, and starts to converse with it. And the rest of the family thinks that she's cracking. She's talking to somebody that's not there. She calls her husband into the house and into the bedroom, and she's like, "Don't you see her?" And he's like, "I don't see anybody." And he's an Italian guy, you know. He's like, "What? You can imagine. What are you, stunad?" So it just progressed to physical, you know, the physical aspect of the objects moving around the house, to the physical assaults of their own daughter.
And what is this being saying to the woman? What are they talking about?
Well, she's communicating with it, which is the first thing you're not supposed to do, is communicate with it. You know what happens when you communicate, right? We discussed that in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
What did Eve do? She communicated with the spirit. Well, she communicated with it. That's the first mistake. And it spins a tale. It's taking elements of her life and spinning this tale to gain the empathy that it needs to ingratiate itself with her in the ultimate goal of possessing her.
So
possessing this lady.
So the woman's seeing what she thinks is a ghost, and the ghost is telling her, "Oh, I died here, and I need help from my parents," and is looking for some type of vindication in her death or something to that effect.
She's claiming she was a bride and she was murdered, and her fiance was found guilty of the crime wrongfully, and he was in prison, and you know, it was a whole story that was built around this to draw this woman and this family in, because that's exactly what it did. It got everybody but the husband involved. He was the only one that it could see, because, you know, it was sort of strange because there was extended family living in this house at this time, and the family upstairs got involved in it also. That's where I believe this whole thing originated from, was from upstairs, because of what I experienced in that house, that, you know, in that apartment upstairs.
And what did you experience? You go over there, you hear this story, this woman's conversing with this ghost, and then what happens in your experience?
Well, I had gone upstairs because I normally walk around the houses when I'm involved in investigating cases, and it was an empty apartment. The people had moved out, and as soon as I walked in, the doorknob started to rattle. I can hear it. I can hear the doorknob, and there's nobody in this apartment. So, I looked around. There was one room that was painted all black. This guy was a practicing Satanist, from what I found out later on. When I asked the family about them, about the people that lived upstairs. They told me that he was a little strange, So, we realized that it might have been the draw because we had another possible explanation. One of the young kids played with a Ouija board, at a party. So it created a little argument between the sisters. You can't blame her because she was being physically assaulted the way she was. Possible incubus attack and all of this very, very nasty stuff. It was one of the most extreme cases of oppression that I've investigated, was that case. With the amount of physical assault that she went through, that was a very bad one.
And this would happen in the night? She would wake up to...
Happen all even in the daytime.
Really?
Yeah. It starts out usually at night, and then once it hits the oppression stage, it's happening during the day in broad daylight, outside the house.
What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I want to help you make sports more fun. That's right. If you like watching sports, there's a way to make it 10 times more fun, and that is with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's absolutely super fun and super easy to play. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 player stats and hit more or less, and you can watch the winnings roll in. And to be honest with you, I'm pretty good. I've been winning some money, but I've lost more. I'll be honest. I'm bleeding money right now. I'm terrible at this game. I know nothing about sports. I'm awful. I always click more or less on the wrong things. So whatever I do the exact opposite of. Apparently, people are winning money on this. There's some people that are making, they turn $10 into $1,000 in just a few taps. Not me. Maybe you could figure it out. I don't know how to do it. So let's look at the picks from this week, shall we? Tonight, we got an all-star, coast-to-coast battle, all right? We got the Celtics versus the Lakers, so I'm going to go more on LeBron, all right? Greatest of all time. You got to go more. Why would you ever go less on LeBron, okay? Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I'm saying more on both of them too because I just like seeing just a good game, all right? How about everyone just tries their best, okay? Shall we? That's going down tonight, Lakers, Celtics. See, isn't this fun? Isn't sports more fun when you can watch it, enjoy it, and get some cash while you're watching millionaires play a game? Ugh. I mean, this is what America's all about. So if you're interested in playing, go to the App Store, download the Prize Picks app on your mobile device, use the promo code CAMP, C-A-M-P, and with your first $5 lineup, you will get $50 instantly deposited into your account that you are able to play with. That's right. I mean, here I am, giving the good people some funds to play with. So, you're welcome. Well, let's get back to the show. Hey guys, we're going to take a break really quick because as you know, life gets crazy, and one person's negligence can result in another settlement. That's right. If you've ever been injured by the negligence of another, you deserve to be paid. And if you don't call a lawyer, you're probably leaving money on the table. And that's why if you are ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. That's right. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers with $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients. Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. I'm telling you, submitting a claim is so easy. Like, there's a lot of things in life that are hard, okay? A lot of things. I mean, I don't know, trying to open a beer can, but your hands are really cold. That's hard. But submitting a claim with Morgan & Morgan is easy. So if you are ever injured, you could check out Morgan & Morgan. This is where it gets amazing because their fee is free unless they win. That's right. Unless they can win your case and get you money, you pay $0. So for more information, go to forthepeople.com/Gagnon. That's correct. forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. That's for the people, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. And also, I'm pretty sure this is a paid advertisement. I think I have to say that. Anyway, let's get back to the show.
There was a case that the Warrens worked on. It was a demonic oppression case, and guy went out tried to start his car, wouldn't start, so they had the car towed to the garage, and the mechanic called him and said, "Are you pulling some kind of joke on me? Because all of the internal parts to your engine have been disconnected." So I had to take the whole engine apart to find out what the hell was wrong with it. And he wound up finding that the parts inside the engine were disconnected.
Deeply embedded in the engine.
What's that?
Deeply embedded inside
the engine.
Like some junkie didn't come and disconnect it.
No.
Hmm.
He said, "Are you pulling a joke on me?"
Because it was obviously removed.
Parts inside the car, the engine, are no longer connected.
And it
to
wasn't
where they're supposed to be connected.
It wasn't chewed through by a rat or a squirrel or something like this.
No.
It was just disconnected by hand, ostensibly.
You know those pistons that go up and down?
Yeah.
They were all disconnected. No rodent was going to do that.
Right. Strange. And with this Virginia case, the woman is seeing the ghost, and then it ultimately invites the ghost to, I guess, into her in some capacity. Is that fair to say?
Through communication, it was entering her without permission. It's called transient possession, and she fought against that. She would tell it, "Don't enter me. You could talk to me. I could relay the message," but it was trying to get in. It was trying to get that permission, so it was entering. She was pushing it out, and eventually, it would have taken her over.
And
if we didn't intervene.
And what ended up happening in this case? What was the intervention like?
Well, we had gone over to that case at the request of one of the exorcists that we knew. I didn't work with him. He was a diocesan exorcist. They were rare. But we went over and at his request, and we were not prepared to do anything for the family, just an interview. She came on a possession while we were there. So we helped her out. We didn't quite do what was considered an exorcism, but we were able to free her from the grasp of this thing with the relics. We had relics of the True Cross, both Joe and I. So we utilized them for that. Very powerful relic. We were able to help her out there.
Now, when you say she came under possession, what did that look like? You guys were all just sitting and talking.
Yeah, we were downstairs in the basement. And we were downstairs, we were praying, and because I had a problem earlier in that basement, and one of the, I think it was the son-in-law, came down and said she's having a problem. So we went upstairs, and she was stiff. She was stiff, and she was stammering, stuttering, and she was trying to tell us to go. And I just put my relic right on the top of her head, and Joe put the relic on her breastplate. We commanded it in the name of Jesus to leave, and eventually she came around and she was okay. She didn't remember what happened, but she was all right. And we continued, and then we left, and the priest never went. He never went. We were so angry with him, So we went back. I took my whole team there this next time, and we were able to cast it out, and it stayed out this time. We did it right, and I never heard from them again.
And so this woman, just by interfacing with this ghost that she thought she was helping, or that she wanted to, be charitable to, then was able to take control.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that it wanted to possess her, but it assaulted the hell out of her daughter. So people would say, "Oh, it wants the daughter." No, it wants the mother.
And that's the weak point.
That's how it broke down. That's how it broke down the mother's will, is to assault the daughter. What's the best way to get at a parent? There's no better way to get even with a parent than to do something to their child. It might get you killed, but that's the best way to get at somebody, is through their kids.
So what are some other ways that a home can get some type of demonic being? Obviously crimes or murders or seances or things like that. Are there other examples?
No, you pretty much covered them all.
Mm-hmm. The evil acts.
There needs to be a draw. There needs to be an invitation. It could be the land. Something could have been done on the land, and it opened the portal. And then here we come along and we build, all of these nice houses and people move in. And now crap's happening. Like the movie The Poltergeist. Right?
Sure.
Do you know where the real case to the Poltergeist is? It's in New York. It's in Seaford, New York.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Just a few short miles away from the Amityville house. A lot of bad stuff going on over in that area.
Yeah. And what do you think it is? Is it related to the land?
A lot of Satanism in the past.
The practice of Satanism on the land.
Yeah, Puritans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So the Puritans were practicing Satanism.
I believe they were playing with a lot of stuff, the Puritans.
And is that connected to
And you also had a lot of large Indian population in that area.
And conjuring.
The Massapequa Indians, the Amityville Indians, where the Amityville houses. There's all, theory that house in Amityville was built on now Indians, they didn't bury their dead, they burned them.
Mm-hmm.
But they would take their criminally insane and they would chain them to trees and they would let them starve to death. Mm-hmm. And they would usually do this in the place where they burnt those bodies.
Mm.
So we're thinking that the Amityville house was built over an Indian ritual site. That's one of the theories. There's a lot of theories about the Amityville house.
Mm-hmm. And in these movies, typically it's obviously dramatized, right? Like Poltergeist and Amityville, The Exorcist, things like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things they always like to show is these like supernatural events that are beyond comprehension. A person climbing walls or their head spinning, things like that you had mentioned before. Have you ever seen versions of that, like someone, climbing something or defying gravity in some way? It's more subtle than that.
No, I never witnessed it, no.
Mm-hmm. Are there examples of that you find
not people, objects, but not people.
Mm. And are there examples that are credible within demonic literature of people doing that, climbing walls?
Yeah, there's you heard of this guy, Zach Bagans, right?
Mm-mm.
Well, he's the ghost adventure guy. He bought a house. I don't know where it was. Chicago, Minnesota. I don't know where it is. It's called the Demon House. To make a long story short, it was a young boy, I believe. They brought him to the hospital. And he crawled up the wall in front of cops and doctors. So, yeah, it happens. And it is recent. We're not talking about something that happened, back in the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
This is a recent 21st century case. He was exorcised, it was unfortunate for the, in the hospitals, there's usually a priest assigned to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when this kid walked up the wall, they went and they called the priest, and he happened to be the priest on duty, and he happened to be the priest that got the exorcist, the bid to do the exorcism. I marvel at that because the original exorcism case? Do you know the movie The Exorcist?
Sure.
The original case is a Father Bowden, a Jesuit, was asked to evaluate this little boy. And what he came upon was that he was genuinely possessed. And when he told the bishop said to him, "Okay, good. When do you start?" And Father Bowden said, "Start what?" He goes, "The exorcism. You got it."
Oh, wow.
That was it, man. He just happened to be there. That's, that's God's providence, but I marvel at that. Could have been anybody else, but he drew it and he got it. And now he has to deal with it. And that's just incredible to me.
So now the kid going up the wall in the hospital, the doctors, non-religious potentially, saw this happen.
Yes.
And they documented and reported this to police and to law enforcement. And so that's on the record from these doctors that maybe have no spiritual basis that saw this thing.
No.
Interesting. Do you know if anything came of those doctors, if it changed their perspective? I mean, certainly seeing something like that might invoke some type of religiosity.
They're really reluctant to announce it a miracle. They really are. They don't like doing it. Some of them have, they recognize it. They have a religious, a vein to them. So they'll say, it's got to be a miracle. It can't be anything else.
I see.
And I've witnessed a few.
Witnessed a few what?
Miracles. I'm not going to go into it. But, I had a pretty strange coincidence or a happening. In August, I had a heart attack. I went to the hospital. They put me in a hospital. I had to get a heart catheterization, but the doctor was backed up, and I had to wait in that hospital for a few days. So I'm laying in this hospital bed, and doctor walks in. He had some kind of a European accent. I don't know if he was Polish or if he was Russian. He walks in, and I notice he has a miraculous medal around his neck, but it's on the outside of his shirt. Nobody wears a miraculous medal on the outside of their shirt. So I said, "Hey, doc, the miraculous medal." He says, "I see you got your scapula." I had my scapula, He says to me, "No blockage, no stent, you'll be fine." And he walked out. So I'm laying there and I'm like, yeah, well, how the hell does he know that? He didn't even touch me. How does he know? I'm getting nervous. They're going to put a camera in my heart. I'm not happy about this, and I don't like doctors anyway. But so I'm laying there. He comes in the next day, a Sunday, the day before the procedure. He looks in, he goes, "No blockage, no stent. You're fine." And he walks out. And, I'm just, well, no blockage, no stent. And I'm still here. So, how he knew that? What doctor does that? He diagnosed me. He gave me a clean bill of health without even looking at me.
Strange.
I don't know of many doctors that are going to do that.
No, I've never heard of that. That's interesting.
So these things, they happen.
Yeah. Now, in regards to demonology, I've heard that knowing and invoking the name of a specific demon can be helpful for casting it out. Is this the case? Have you worked on cases where you had to learn the name of the demon?
Well, we don't invoke it. That's number one. The reason why we want to know the name of the demon, well, there's two reasons. One is because usually the name reveals the nature. Once we know the nature, we might have a piece to the puzzle that we need to casting it out. And number two is it answers to that name. So now we're not exercising every demon ever created. We're exercising you. You know what I mean? You. Now you answer to this. That's why they don't like giving their names.
And how do you learn the name of a demon?
Well, they give it to us.
And you have to coax it
Beat
from
it
them?
out of them.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah,
and
they don't give it up easy.
And have you heard names you've never heard before, and then you research it, and there's
No, I don't do that. I am not interested in the names of demons. I don't want to hear them. Don't give me their name. I get people that tell me, "Oh, I know the demon's name." I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I'm not casting it out. When I'm going to cast it out, then I'm going to ask you what its name is. But before then, if I'm sitting here in this chair, I don't want to know its name.
And what is the concern from knowing the name?
Well, I don't want to draw it to me.
Right.
There's no need for it. What's the benefit?
Right.
You know what I mean?
It just potentially opens you up. There's a risk.
Yeah, it just gives it the, the ability to look at me now and want to mess with me. And I really don't want it to mess with me.
Mm-hmm. Now, kids oftentimes are dumb, as I know very personally.
A lot of adults that are dumb too. So.
Yeah. But kids typically, will do sort of things kind of as like a joke or maybe as like a party prank with each other that seem like they're tangentially related to the demonic, right? Like, kids will use a Ouija board, which is explicitly demonic, or maybe they'll go in the mirror and they'll say Bloody Mary 3 times. Things like this that seem kind of innocuous to the average person, maybe a non-religious person. Do you think that there is that these behaviors are dangerous?
Well, it's more the intention behind it than anything else. Is what is your intention? You just goofing off? That doesn't mean anything. There's no intention. If you put intent behind it, then there could be a problem.
I see. So you'd have to use a Ouija board and specifically try to invoke something or conjure something. Or if you're doing some type of ritual, you'd have to specifically be trying to have some intention.
Well, you have an intention, sure.
I see.
When I pray the rosary, I have an intention when I pray the rosary. I just don't pray it just to pray it. There's a reason why I'm praying it. And there's a means to an end. And I'm using the life of Jesus and the Blessed Mother as a means to that end.
I see.
So there needs to be an intention.
Now, you had mentioned Native Americans and some of their traditions, and we'd spoke a little bit before that different cultures virtually across the world that have any religious tradition typically have some type of bad spirit. They have some type of evil spirit. In Islam, it's known as a jinn. In Santeria and Voodoo, they'll have their own specific negative spirits. You had mentioned that sometimes these spirits behave differently. Could you elaborate on the different types of spirits as they occur in different cultures, which spirits are the most volatile and how they manifest depending on the culture that you're interfacing with?
Well, that's just it. They're going to manifest within the culture. It has to be understood, what's going on. And, that was something that Ed Warren had brought out years ago, and it's something that I remembered is that the demonic will attack according to the culture. Like, we were, when he was speaking about the Enfield demon, the Enfield, England, the voices, when the voices were recorded, this disembodied voices, they were recorded in Cockney, in English Cockney. It was they didn't have a different way of speaking. They spoke according to the culture that they were operating within. In Africa, they're going to operate in a different way. So, it's the same exact thing that the way we, as human beings, say you're in the CIA, right? And you're going to go over to a country and you're going to do some nasty things to some people. You're going to go and you're going to mix with their culture. You're going to attack them according to their culture, because if you don't, you're going to draw attention to yourself. They're going to see you. You're going to get spotted. Like if ISIS comes and gets a safe house on this block, well, we're pretty much going to know they're there,
right.
Because they're not within the culture of this neighborhood. Now, I'm not saying that an Arabic family can move in and they could be very nice people and they can assimilate, and that'll be great. That's fine. But what I'm talking about is ISIS is going to operate on a different level.
I see.
On another level. And you're going to recognize it.
I see. But you were mentioning that, Santeria and Voodoo, those demonic forces are perhaps more violent. Have you?
I don't like dealing with them.
Have you? You've had experience with, Caribbean, Caribbean demons.
They don't go easy.
Could you take us through some of those cases? How did this come up on your radar, and what did you do? All the details of how it unfolded.
Well, it was the people that was surrounding this one particular person.
And where was this? This is in New York?
I believe it was New Jersey. I believe it was Jersey. And this person married into a family that didn't like her. The husband's mother, her mother-in-law, didn't like her. And they owned a business that employed a lot of Haitian people, Jamaican people. And we believe that the mother-in-law employed one of these people to put a curse on this woman, because we've never been able to help her.
Oh, really?
Not only numerous exorcisms for her, but numerous exorcists. And it seemed that a lot of the exorcists, when they got involved with her, wound up, some bad things would befall them. One went missing. He disappeared off the face of the earth. So, there seemed to have been some type of pattern with this person, that any exorcist that got involved with her usually got hurt. But Bishop McKenna did pretty well. Bishop McKenna was different.
And what were some of her symptoms? What was going on with her that would indicate she was possessed?
She would complain about, she would feel that something, the only thing that she can describe it as is a scorpion that would have many tentacles sticking into her body. This is what she would envision when she would come under possession. She would visualize this demon would completely envelop her body. And the aversion to holy objects. But this particular person was able to receive the Holy Communion. She was able to receive the Holy Eucharist. And we believe that her demon was more of a devil than a demon. It was a high level, and it was very, very nasty. And we could not help this lady.
Wow. And was she, again, violent, or was she...
It wasn't so much as violent as her behavior was sinful.
She was acting in a sinful way. And can you elaborate on what she was doing? No. Okay. But she was behaving in a way that indicated to the exorcists and the people around her.
She would live in a mortal state of sin.
I see. And do you know what happened to her?
No.
Bishop McKenna was able to...
No.
Wow. And is there something as far as what the curses are doing within this specific culture? Is there a sacrifice? Is there some type of ritual that makes it more powerful?
Don't know.
Are you familiar with that in any other cases? Some type of curse being done where someone does some type of sacrifice?
Yeah, that woman that we spoke about earlier, that was the result of a curse.
Which one was this? This is...
the woman, the 90-pound woman.
Right.
That was the result of a curse.
And is there a ritual that goes along with the curse? Are you familiar with what these curses are?
Yeah, they usually have rituals. There's very few people that are on this earth that we call or consider natural witches.
Mm-hmm.
And those are people that have the ability to just align an intention with a demonic entity, and it'll be carried out. But that's usually where you're dealing with people who are generational, meaning the whole entire family are Satanists. The whole entire family is dedicated to Lucifer. The whole entire family is dedicated to the devil.
Oh, wow. And have you ever met any of these people? Have you interfaced with them?
Yeah.
And can you explain what that experience was like?
One of them was a real good friend of mine.
Really?
Yeah.
And how long did you know this person?
I knew him for a few years. We spoke about him earlier.
Really?
You and me.
Oh, wow.
He could read minds.
Mm-hmm. And was from a family of Satanists.
Yeah.
Wow. And was this person doing curses on people? Were they practicing Satanism in any actual sense?
Well, he didn't have to do that. He could just form an intention, and the familiar in his family would carry out the act. But he became a religious.
Oh, really?
He became a brother. He left his family, and they've been hunting him ever since.
Oh, wow.
They've been trying to kill him for a long time.
Actively trying to kill him.
Oh, yeah. You don't leave the family like that.
Wow. I mean, and when you say carry out the act, that he would set this intention, the family would carry out the act. What act is that?
whatever act he needed done.
This would be sacrificing an animal or something?
Well, it would be a sacrifice that would go along. All ritual requires a sacrifice, depending on what's at stake, or the greater the greater the stake, the greater the sacrifice. The bigger the gift, the bigger the sacrifice. And human sacrifice is not off the table. It's usually animal. They go after the animals.
It'd be easier to do.
Well, yeah, it attracts less attention. A missing kid might raise eyebrows, but these days, with the way kids go missing, do we really know where all of these kids are ending up?
Now, can satanic possession or demonic possession result in death outright? We've talked about a lot of stories where people are being attacked.
Well, that would be the result. They'd want it. And that would be the end result.
Have you dealt with a case that ended in those circumstances?
Well, I've had people die, yeah.
And how does that come to fruition? What are the steps to that? Could you take us through a specific case?
What do you mean, during an exorcism?
Or perhaps afterwards?
Oh, no, nothing like that. Nothing is extreme. Broken ribs, broken bones, injuries during exorcisms, they occur.
But when you say violent, someone dies.
But I've never had anybody die. I've had, people commit suicide. We were working with them and just got too much for them and they did away with themselves, stuff like that. But never during an exorcism. No, nothing is, as dramatic as that. No.
But afterwards, years later, there might be death.
Yeah, people die.
Have they ever left like a note or some type of indication that they had killed themselves because of this possession?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's the idea of a curse is very scary, that someone could just curse you. Is there any way to prevent someone from cursing you?
Yeah. Pray the rosary.
Yeah.
Have a relationship with God. Because not every spell or curse is going to work. It's impossible. God won't allow them all to work. And I dealt with a guy in a case years ago, and he claimed that he was doing spells for the mob. And I had asked him, I said, did they work? He said, not all of them. So I believed them then.
Did the mob know that he was doing spells?
Yeah, they were going to him for that reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And the mob was looking to whack people?
They would use any means that they could use. And if they can find a way to whack somebody without having to actually go there and do it, you don't think they would do that? Holy cow. That would be the best. Hey, listen, I want Frankie gone. Yeah, do a spell. Boom, Frankie's dead.
Wow.
That's it.
But do you think that was...
No cops, no DAs, no nothing. That would be the ultimate way.
Do you think that was common with the mob, or do you think this was a kind of a one-off kind of...
I think a lot of the guys in the mob are afraid of this stuff, and they try to stay away from it.
Right. They grew up Catholic, typically. And...
Most of them are Catholic because they're Italians,
Right.
I've heard stories of actual mob guys that were afraid to go into a house because there was something in their house. It was one of the guys that has the podcast. He said that this mob guy happened to kill his own father, and he dropped him off at the house. And the guy said, "Wait a minute." He went up, he opened the door, and he called in, and then waved to and then he went in, and he was wondering what happened. What's the problem? He says, "I don't go in the house unless there's somebody else in there. I won't stay in there alone." I always wanted to contact that guy and try to elaborate on that to find out more about it, because this is a guy who killed his own father. He's afraid to go into a house because there's a ghost in it. I wanted to know more about that.
Yeah.
These guys, they don't mess with that stuff. They're afraid of it.
So are ghosts always demonic?
No.
In what way could a ghost not be demonic?
Human spirits are not demonic.
So could there be ghosts that someone could see that are not necessarily evil?
Yeah. Any ghost that you see is not necessarily evil. They might be mean, but they're not evil. And even if they are, they can't affect the spirit world once they leave the physical world. They can't affect this world, the physical world.
But demons can.
Oh, yeah, the demonic can, definitely.
I see.
And there are 3 types of spirits: human spirit, demonic spirits, and elementals, the nature spirits.
And what is an elemental?
An elemental is a neutral spirit. It's neither good nor evil. It's an element of nature. It's an elemental. Anything that has a life has a soul. Even the plants, they have a vegetative soul. All right. Animals have a sensitive soul, and us human beings have an intelligent soul. That's the breakdown according to the Catholic faith. And these elementals are usually utilized by witches in witchcraft. And like I said, they're neither good nor evil. That's how they're utilized.
I see.
They don't speak. They chirp. You know, sometimes you'll hear them chirping. They'll make noises. A lot of noises that you might hear sometimes are attributed to elementals. They got nothing to do with human spirit or demonic spirit.
So can animals become possessed?
It's possible, but I've never heard of a case, and I don't see why that would be possible. The only time that I know of it in recorded history is the swine, when Jesus let Legion go into the swine. But what did the swine do immediately after that?
Cast it out.
They committed suicide. So even the pigs realized that what they had in them, they didn't want.
Interesting. Now, in Catholicism, in our faith, items can be blessed. Is the inverse possible, where items can be cursed?
Yes. Call them contact objects.
And have you dealt with this?
Yes.
And can you give me an example of a case where you dealt with a cursed item?
I was funny enough, Scott Derrickson was with me when I investigated this case, and Paul Boardman, and they both wrote "Deliver Us from Evil." And I had gone to this woman's house. There was a bishop that had sent me over there, and I believe this woman was suffering from mental illness, but that doesn't mean that she didn't have a problem. So I was trying to figure out if her problem was spiritual or if it was mental illness. And I was interviewing her, and I was sitting in a living room, and I noticed the bowl, a glass bowl with a metal top on it, and it had white powder in it. And I asked, I says, what's that powder? She says, oh, it's voodoo powder. I said, voodoo powder? Where'd you get it? She said, I got it from the Protestant minister down the street. So I got up. See that holy water bottle? I had that in my right hand. Right? I poured holy water into my left hand. Right? Put the holy water on. I picked up the metal top, and I sprayed a stream of holy water into that powder. And I got a shock from the tip of my left hand that traveled right up to my elbow. And I dropped that metal thing, and I was like I was not in control of myself. And I backed up, actually. And I walked by Scott Derrickson, and Scott looked at me and said, Ralph, you okay? And he said, I don't remember this. He said, you gave me a look like you wanted to kill me. He said, and walked right by me. And I don't remember any of that. But that nailed me. It nailed me good. So
what is voodoo powder? Like, what is this made of? What is it used for?
I don't know what that is, and I don't know what it was. But all I know is that it was electrically charged because it went through my body. And I have a fear of electricity when I was 3 years old. Now, my mother swore that this is the reason why I was as nutty as I am, but I took 2 keys and I stuck them into
an outlet.
An outlet, and I never forgot that.
Yeah.
I remember the feeling. I could still feel it.
Yeah.
And I fear electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And I got nailed by that, whatever was in that bowl. And I yelled at that lady and packed up my stuff and I walked out.
Wow.
And the bishop was very upset with me, but I'm like, I'm not doing it. You deal with her. I'm not dealing with it. I got electrocuted in that house. I'm not dealing with that crap.
Yeah. You need rubber boots or something.
Well, I was not expecting that.
Yeah. Now, what about like you see this in film, like a cursed doll or some type of artifact or a statue that's cursed?
You see, what was the name of that movie? Annabelle.
Annabelle,
yeah.
Right?
There you go.
And have you heard of cases like this or worked on cases like this where someone purchased something or they were given a doll or some type of voodoo doll that it was causing problems?
Not that I could, not something that was like in your face, like that. It's real difficult to decipher that, like in the Demon Files, the mirror, the mirror was a contact object, I sort of knew that. I don't know how I knew that, but I knew. That's how it works. I don't have ability outside of cases.
Sure.
I don't have no psychic. I'm about as psychic as a rock, but when I'm investigating a case, I am more intuitive to what, my surroundings and in the directions that I need to travel. Not all the time. Sometimes I'm pulling my hair out, I'm trying to figure out where am I going with this? Why am I meeting brick walls here?
Mm-hmm.
Each case is different and you can never, assume it's going to be easy. Don't worry. No.
Was there any case specifically that made you just want to quit and just say, it's not worth dealing with this? No. Have you ever been attacked in some way by a demon?
Well, yeah, in the basement of that case that we spoke about, with the woman who came under possession, I had gone downstairs. After I had gone upstairs, and that door knob was rattling, and then it was rattling in the apartment I was in while we were doing interviews. It was in the corner. It was rattling, or down the hallway. I went down into the basement, and it was split into 2 portions. There was like French doors, and then in this area there was living space. There was a washing machine and storage in this space. And I went into that area when I first went down there, and I looked around. I checked everything. Ceilings, I lift ceiling. I look in everything. And I come out, I shut the doors, and I went into the other side, and there was a mirror down there that I was interested in. So I took a couple of photographs of the mirror, and I just tried to get my impressions, and I was leaving. And as I was walking out, something just gripped me right in the spot that I was in. And I turned around. It felt like something was behind me. And I was looking at those 2 double doors, and I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was, my heart was beating. I felt like I had a wet rag over my face, and I could not move. I was frozen, and I started to picture a big silvery cross in my mind. That's how I was trained, to picture this big silvery cross. And I reached into my back pocket, got that holy water bottle out, and threw it at those doors. And I backed up those steps because a couple of minutes, a couple of hours earlier, I heard that there was a big ladder that was launched at somebody down in that basement. So I was very cognizant of what was going on, and I came up backwards. And later on, I told my partner, Joe, I said, hey, Joe, I had this problem down in the basement over there. And he said, here, look at this. He says, why did you go down there without me? He says, look at this note. And one of the lines was, harm will come to those below, beware the night. So I was laughing because the demon said, "Beware the night," named the book. You know, we couldn't come up with a title. We had something else. So I'm like, "You're going to actually let this demon name my book?" So we were laughing about it, but that was the thing. Home will come to those below, beware the night.
Wow. Wow. Now, you had said that obviously the book became adapted into the movie Deliver Us from Evil, and you were on set while they were filming the movie. And you had said that some things had happened on the set of this movie that were bizarre or strange. Can you elaborate?
Nobody came to me with that. I had heard that there was some things happening in Kaufman Studios, but there's always been things happening in Kaufman Studios that's got a reputation as being haunted. So I discounted it. I was in a room. It was probably the first or second day that I was at the studio, and we weren't even ready for photography yet. It was all script work. So I was in a room with Scott Derrickson, Edgar Ramirez, Eric Bana, and the speech coach. Her name was Nadia. And I was sitting at a desk, and they were reading the script. And all of a sudden, the window shade just came crashing off. It just came down, boom. And everybody in that room looked over at me. And I just sat there. Okay, what do you want me to do about it? The shade fell off the window. Continue. You know, so what? Was it the old shade that fell? Or was it the demon that knocked it off the thing? I don't know. Who cares?
You know? It's a little unsettling.
Yeah, but who cares?
I mean, I care. I would care. Yeah, I mean, if something flew off this bookshelf, I'd be a little unsettled.
Well, yeah, I guess, it would. I don't.
It doesn't faze
you. I'm desensitized to it. You know, it's like seeing a dead body as a cop. I'm desensitized to seeing dead bodies.
The first time it's a little creepy, and then after a couple times it's just business.
Well, yeah, the first time you're like, oh man, what am I getting myself into? I got 20 years of this. But after a while, you really do become desensitized to it. It's no longer an issue.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I got to tell you about an amazing service known as Blue Chew. That's right. Blue Chew is a service that basically delivers this chewable tablet to your door whenever you want, once a week, once a month. I don't even know if they could do it that frequently, but they'll send it right to your door. You don't have to go to the doctor and have some awkward conversation with some guy in a lab coat, some dude that's judging you, probably, if I had to guess. With Blue Chew, it's super discreet. The packaging is discreet. It's just a couple questions on their website, and they will send you chewable tablets that have basically the same active ingredients as like a Viagra or a Cialis, but at the fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. It's great. It truly is. I mean, one time I was in the woods and we were cold and it was raining, and I pitched a tent with the help of Blue Chew, and everyone gathered under it, and we were safe, and it saved me and a lot of lonely people. So if you're interested in Blue Chew, here's how you get it. You're going to go to bluechew.com and use the promo code GAGNON. That's right, GAGNON. It's kind of funny, Gagnon as the promo code. I don't know why exactly, but it is funny. And you're going to receive your first month for free. That's right, bluechew.com. Use the promo code Gagnon. Check it out. Blue Chew. Let's get back to the show.
Okay, before we discuss aliens and hallucinogenic drugs, like I had said, I'm curious, there's a chapter in your book, The Werewolf, and that's not a chapter that I got into. So could you take us through the case that is the werewolf?
All right, the werewolf case, that case had come directly into me, actually. I got the call on that, and I got a call on my answering machine, and it was garbled, and the only thing that I could understand was help me. It drove me nuts. I was trying so hard to try and get the number that the guy was giving me, but I heard a lot of background noise. and just driving me insane. And then a couple hours later, my partner Joe calls me. He said, "Ralph, I just got a phone call. We got a case. It's in Jersey. I think they were in Jersey, and he tried calling you from the highway. He came under attack while he was driving his car, and he felt like something was wrong, so he pulled over and he called my number. Now, the way he got my number was Ed and Lorraine Warren were on, I believe it was Sally Jesse Raphael, talking about a man named Bill Ramsey, who was from England, and he was demonically possessed by a demonic spirit that had the characteristics of a werewolf. All right. He had an interesting case just like this guy, Craig Morton. And he tried to call me, but he couldn't get the message out properly, and the background noise made it impossible. So the wife was watching Sally Jesse Raphael, and she saw it, and they gave, at the end of the show, they gave my number and Joe's number, and she took the numbers down and gave the numbers out to her husband. This is the name of the guy. So I guess he must have come under attack and then decided to call me, and we wound up setting up an interview, and he was digging up the asphalt outside of his house with his hands. He was tearing at it. This is the way the man from England, Bill Ramsey, was digging up the tiles in his bathroom floor. He would feel an attack come on. He would lock himself in the bathroom so he didn't hurt anybody, and he would scratch at the floor, at the tiles, and tear up the tiles. And that's what this guy was doing here in the United States. So, I was familiar with it. I've heard it before. So we set up an exorcism with Bishop McKenna. And we had gone up there, and during the Litany of the Saints, like I said, that's how the bishop starts. During the Litany of the Saints, Greg started to react. We had him in a straitjacket, and he started reacting to the Litany of the Saints. And he actually was able to pull his arms almost out of the straitjacket. It was looped around, but he was getting those arms free. And what I had was, the clotheslines. It's got the nylon or the vinyl around the nylon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the I replaced the cloth string with that nylon string because it was stronger, and tied that up. And he started to pull that apart. So, we jumped on him. There was about 8 of us there, and he was growling, and he actually moved us all, the 8 of us, he moved us all over to the side. He pushed back on the pew, and it pulled the pew out, the moorings out of the floor.
Wow.
So finally the bishop realized we were having a problem, and he turned around and he came with the holy water, and he in his style, he told it to be quiet. Stop with the gibberish and listen to the prayers, demon. That was Bishop McKenna. Stop with the gibberish, demon. And he went back to the prayers, and it was over just as quick as it started. So the bishop continued with the full exorcism. And Greg just sat there crying and sweating, saying, "It's over. It's gone. It's gone." He just kept saying, "It's gone." And that was it. And I got a Christmas card from them the next Christmas, and that was it.
Wow. And do you know how he got possessed by this demon?
I have no idea.
Wow. And
I have no idea.
And was there issues in his home?
I have no idea.
Strange.
Now, if someone feels as though they have some type of issue like this is manifesting within them, or their house has some bizarre occurrences, what should they do?
Contact the priest.
Just of a local parish.
Hopefully you'll get the priest over your house to bless the house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at Bill Ramsey, I mean, he got possessed, he claims, when he was a young kid. And it stuck with him through his whole entire childhood. It was just dormant. And he described it as, he remembers the day. He said he was out in his backyard. He said he felt a coldness deep in his soul like he never felt before, and he didn't understand it. That's what he described it. And then it took him over, and he would lose consciousness. He would not remember what he did. And he was running around, what is it, Southend-on-Sea, England, terrorizing people, beating cops up, tossing 6-foot cops across the room.
Was he successfully exorcised?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's kind of scary that this could just happen and be dormant.
Well, he came from England to America, and Bishop McKenna exorcised them. I wasn't involved with Bishop McKenna at the time. I did meet Bill Ramsey later on, but I wasn't involved in any of his exorcisms.
Mm-hmm. Now, can non-Catholics exorcise effectively?
What do you mean?
Like other faith traditions, Protestants, other religious folks that are not Catholic?
Well, you know, the Protestants have deliverance ministers, and I don't know if you know who M. Scott Peck is. Well, M. Scott Peck is a pretty prominent Protestant deliverance minister and psychiatrist. He wrote Children of the Lie, People of the Lie. It's People of the Lie. I was in his house with Bishop McKenna and Father Kumaraswamy. They were performing an exorcism on tour with his congregation. I don't know of many Protestants that have been successful in exorcism. I believe they can be. I believe a layman could be successful in solemn exorcism. I just don't ascribe to doing it. But I believe that Father Martin, he adhered to the fact that there are some laymen that would be successful exorcising people if they undertook the task.
And I guess you would mention that there's some prophylactic measures you could take to say, praying the rosary, going to confession regularly. You had mentioned the scapular, and Phil had mentioned in the break that he wasn't sure what a scapular was. Could you just explain the difference between a scapular and a blessed metal or miraculous metal, and how those could be used in demonology?
It's just a different devotional, like the miraculous metal. They're all accompanied with prayers. We just don't have it's not a talisman, or an amulet. There's a devotion connected to it. They're accompanied with prayers. And, it's just one of the many different ones. You have the rosary, you have the St. Michael chaplet, which is another form of devotion for the St. Michael and the angels. And, it's just one that you might feel drawn to. There's many of them.
Right.
That's about it. It's and there is a crucifix on it and a St. Benedict medal also, which is very powerful against the demonic.
Now, I had mentioned before we recorded, I had friends that have described alien abduction, that they believe, one friend in particular, he described that his house had some bizarre events that happened when he was a child, that they moved into a home. And if I'm remembering correctly, this came from an episode I did with this guy named Jay King, really sweet guy. And in his home, he went downstairs, and all the books that they were planning on putting on the bookshelf, they went downstairs and they were all laid on the floor in the basement. And they thought that was pretty strange. And then a couple nights later, he had woken up to seeing like 3 beings that looked like kind of gray alien type beings that you might see in a movie. And they came close to him and touched him on the forehead. And then he doesn't really remember anything after that. He said that the beings moved in kind of like a strange fashion. They kind of almost looked like they were, being puppeted, so to say, like a marionette, that they weren't walking like a normal human would walk. And he doesn't remember really anything else. He remembers vague memories of perhaps being abducted, being in some type of sterile room, and kind of a quintessential alien abduction story. And then was back in his bed, woke up that morning and felt traumatized, felt scared, hated the experience. And throughout his life, continued to have more experiences like this, waking up in the night and seeing these entities that would talk to him and things like that. And he became very involved in the UFO community. He said, "This is aliens and I'm being contacted by extraterrestrials." What do you make of a story like this?
Well, I believe that aliens are a demonic deception.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that they are real in the sense that we believe them to be. I don't believe they're from another galaxy. I don't believe they've been created by God. I don't believe they've been created by something other than God. A lot of the UFO phenomenon, and listen, when I was younger, one of the things that I used to read, I started out in the UFO genre and then went over to the ghost stories.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something I failed to mention because it was such a short period in my life that the first attraction was to UFOlogy. As a matter of fact, I know Bob Wirth. I knew Bob Wirth. He was the president of MUFON out of Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I met him a few years ago. A few years, it was a long time ago. When I look at the UFO phenomena, it reminds me more of spirit energy than a craft. But that's not to say that the demonic cannot manipulate a metal craft. What's to stop them from doing it? There isn't anything.
Mm-hmm.
To create that confusion about aliens and demons. For what reason? I don't know. I really never gave it much thought. What could be the reason why the demonic would want to be confused with an alien race? What benefit would it be to them?
Mm-hmm.
If you go into Einstein's theory of relativity, just the idea of space travel is not feasible, not even for an alien race. 186,000 miles per hour. What craft does that?
Right. So you think it's a spiritual energy.
Everything is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. The world around us is the distraction. And that's where the deception comes in.
I see. So if someone is having these types of apparitions, where they're seeing
see a priest.
Entity, see a priest.
Yeah.
There's another phenomenon known as CE5. This is basically, in a way, conjuring some type of alien interaction. And the way it would work is you would go with a CE5. It's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind is what it's called within the UFO community. And that people would gather in potentially large congregations and they would kind of do some type of practice to see some type of orb in the sky. And the people that I've spoken to, I've never done it. But
mass hypnosis?
I don't know exactly what it is. It's an interesting thing because I've spoken to people many times that have talked about this phenomenon, and they say, I went out, I didn't believe in this whole thing. I only believe in the material. I don't believe in the supernatural. I don't believe in these metaphysical things. And I did this practice, and sure enough, I looked up and I see these orbs floating in the sky, and then they go away. And they're not planets. They're unlike planes that I've ever seen. And they say, maybe it's aliens. Who knows what it is? So I'm curious hearing that. Do you consider that to be demonic as well?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what you think.
I don't know anything about it, so I can't really comment on it. All I could say is that when you said that, the first thing that I thought about was the miracle of the sun in 1917, Portugal, in Fatima, Portugal,
mm-hmm.
where, the devil will do anything in his power to confuse as many people as possible to keep them away from God. So that's the way I look at things in those terms.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, everything around us is a distraction. God is telling us, detach yourself from things of this world. We're spiritual. We're missing so much more than just what we have around us, because we've lost the ability.
How can you be sure? In our faith, we have these Marian apparitions, right? And I don't know if it exists, and I guess it's going to be more common amongst Catholic folks. This Mary appearing to the children
I think
of Fatima.
George Washington might disagree with you, but go ahead.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, it's a well-known fact that George Washington was visited by the Blessed Mother during the Revolutionary War.
I had never heard this.
It's a well-documented report.
Can you tell me? I've never heard this before.
Well, I believe it was written by a man named Sherman, not General Sherman, his private physician, I believe. And he wasn't feeling well that day. He spent a lot of time praying that morning. And he gave his personal physician orders to not disturb him unless, really necessary. And while he was in his tent, he looked up and there was a woman standing there. And he described her as one of the most beautiful women that he ever seen, that it struck him dumb, that he couldn't even speak. That's how beautiful she was. And we believe it was the Blessed Mother. She showed him three. What was the word she used? There was a specific word she used. She showed him three things, and one was the Revolutionary War, the other was the Civil War, and the third one was a world war that hasn't happened yet. And she showed him 4 countries that are going to be connected to that third war, that third world war. And she also told him that war is a chastisement sent to us from her son for being so sinful. That's how he punishes us as a nation, is through war. And the Civil War was a punishment for slavery. And the third war is going to be, I guess, the war that ushers in the Antichrist.
I've never heard this before.
That's what I'm assuming.
That's interesting. Now, how, as Catholics, can we be sure that Marian apparitions are different than a demonic apparition? Right? Like the Virgin Mother coming to Juan Diego in Mexico, or to the children of Fatima.
Well, it's in the message. That's why we are supposed to know Scripture. We're supposed to know what the will of God is. So in case we are approached by some spirit and he gives us a message, we know it aligns with God, or if it's not from God. But there's another way. We're told to test the spirit. St. Paul tells us to test the spirit. Any spirit that would ever manifest in front of me is going to have to prove itself to me. I'm going to ask it to say that Jesus Christ is King. The demonic will never do it. Say, I love Jesus. The demonic will never say, I love Jesus. They'll never say it. But a saint or an angel, they'll say it. They'll say they love Jesus. Praise be Lord Jesus Christ. In fact, they'll probably greet you in that manner. Fear not, the Lord has sent me.
Interesting. Now, I have friends that have done hallucinogenic drugs, ayahuasca, peyote, things like this. And they've claimed to have experienced God, that they've, gone in this hallucinogenic state and they have convened with some type of universal power. And they said it was beautiful and it was amazing and life-changing. What do you make of hallucinogenic drug experiences like this? Are they potentially demonic? What would be your thought on that?
Well, if you look at Felicity Goodman, she's a social anthropologist. She studied these different cultures with their RASC. She called it a RASC, the religious altered state of consciousness, where they'll take some type of a substance and have a religious experience with it. I believe there's some validity to it because of this K2 drug, this Flocka drug. When these people take this drug, there seems to be some demonic connection.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to draw out the demonic through chemical.
Interesting.
Now, I mean, it's in the Bible. Chemical, pharmaca is in the Bible. We're very, very well aware of, the herbs, the compounds that have a way of doing good, beneficial things and bad, negative things to the physical body. If the physical body and the spiritual are connected, of course, there could be some kind of a reaction to a drug in a spiritual sense. Yeah. I see it with that flock of stuff.
Right.
The way they behave, the voices, the sounds that are coming out of them are very consistent with what we hear during exorcism.
Interesting. Is it possible it could be positive, that someone could take these drugs and potentially commune with the one true God?
Well, I don't see a reason why. It's not needed.
That you wouldn't.
There's no middleman that you need to connect with God. Maybe a God with a little g? Yeah, because he's not omnipotent. He's not almighty. So you might need that drug in order to make the connection, but our God does not.
So if these people are interfacing with something, you're skeptical that it would be the one true God. It might be some other type of spiritual force.
I couldn't answer. It could be God. It could be God. Why couldn't he? What's in the message, though?
Right.
What is he saying to you? I had people, they call me, they say, God talks to me. And I'm like, yeah, what does he say? That I should come and talk to you. That's it? Yeah. Okay. I'm busy. Father Martin told me a long time ago, anybody who comes up to you and tells you they talk to God, take it with a large grain of salt. He just doesn't talk to people. The last person that I know that he spoke to was Moses. You're going to tell me you're like Moses? You're Joe Blow from Brooklyn. God's talking to you? But the last one he spoke to was Moses, but here he is talking to Joe Blow from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And his message to you is call that guy Ralph. That's it? Give me something.
Yeah.
Give me the lotto numbers. I win the lotto. You're it. I'll talk to you all day long.
Yeah.
And twice on Sunday.
So you've never had someone call you up that said, "Oh, I spoke to God," and revealed something that you thought was, I see.
Give me something. You got to give me something.
Yeah. I mean, this has been fascinating. I feel like we've covered a lot of bases. I appreciate you telling your story. Is there anything else that you guys are curious about that we didn't touch on? By all means, this is now the time.
We didn't even scratch the surface.
Oh, really? What do you mean by that?
We could stay here for a couple of weeks and talk.
Is there any final case that we should discuss before we get out of here? Maybe I can go through the book and we can just do one more. Claudia. Is it true that Claudia, a widow living with the sin of her lover?
Claudia, that sounds like the case with the women.
So can you tell me about the Claudia case?
Well, that was a Warren case. I was watching TV, and I can't remember. Was it Sightings? I think it was Sightings, and they profiled this case, and I recognized it immediately for being demonic, And I called up Ed after the show was over, and I said, "Hey, I just saw a case on Sightings about this family," and he said, "Ralph, I'm not soliciting cases." He said, "We don't solicit cases." He said, I know Sightings, and they know me, and if they'll get us together if God wants it." So I'm like, okay. He taught me that. It was a learning experience. I don't solicit cases now because of that. So it was about a month or two later, I'm on the phone, and Ed goes, Hey, Ralph, Sightings just called. They want us to go to, this place. And I'm like, yeah, Ed, that's the case I was telling you about. He says, "Oh, all right, I want you to come." So I'm like, all right, I'll get the day off of work. So My partner Joe couldn't get the day off of work. I got the day off, and I had to drive out there. It was a 6-hour ride, you know. And so I drove out there, raining, thunderstorm, and I'm like, "What? Why am I doing this? This is my day off. Took a day off. I could be home right now, you know." So we get out there. I get out to that house, and I meet the family. They're all scared. They're all women. It was a house full of women. They're all scared, and you know. A lot of times Ed Warren would, when people claim that they would hear the house being struck, Ed would always tell them, demonstrate it. You know, I want to hear what it sounded like. So they would try to bang on something. And it's always the people in the other room that aren't in there. When they hear the bang, they jump because they're all like on edge. So, you know, these poor people, they're jumping all over the place. So it was a long interview. There was like 8 people in that house. I was there for about 10 hours. It was a long, long time. And these poor kids were being, of course, physically assaulted and sexually assaulted. You know, it got to that point. They described it as this thing, it would originate in the basement. They knew when it was coming because they can hear it coming up the steps. There was a short set of steps, and then the front door, and then another short set of steps coming up. And it was a pretty big house. And they said it sounded like it had cinder blocks on its feet as it was running up the steps. So can you imagine this? It's 3:00 in the morning. You're in bed. And all of a sudden you hear something running up from the stairs. And you don't know when it gets down to your door, what room it's going to go in and who it's going to attack. Because it could attack the mother in that bedroom. It could attack the twins in that bedroom. Or it could attack the daughter and her cousin in this bedroom. And they never knew where it was going to go and what it was going to do. And it terrorized them.
And what was the process of exorcising that home? Same thing?
Well, I was downstairs with Ed, and he goes, "Hey, kid." He called me kid. He goes, "Hey, kid, go do an exorcism." So I'm like, all right. And first he had me do religious provocation, which I hated doing. "Hey, kid, do religious provocation." So I did it.
And what is this?
That's where you command the demon in the name of Jesus Christ to reveal itself. And I don't like doing it.
And why not?
Well, there's no time frame in the spirit world. So there's nothing making it or stopping it from revealing itself 3 years down the road. And I had it happen. So, you know, I know it's a reality. And that's why I didn't like doing it. But Ed was the boss. You know, it was his case. I did what he told me to do and did it. So then he says, "Go upstairs and do the exorcism." And I went and I did the exorcism. And it wasn't until about a year later that I found out that it was successful. It was gone. I was happy to hear that. I felt bad for those women, you know.
And are you still doing this type of work today?
I'm more in a consulting role than anything else. I don't handle cases, you know. It doesn't mean that I won't. I will if I have to, you know. I don't want to do this work. I'm tired, but I'll do it, and I won't complain about it. I'll just do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God will let me know if He wants me to continue in it. If not, He'll keep me doing what I'm doing. If not, he just drags me right back in. And I mean, he drags me. He just, let's go.
When was the last time you got dragged in?
When Deliver Us from Evil came out in the movies. I knew what was going to happen. and I didn't want it to happen, but it did. And that's it. You know,
Has anything happened in this house specifically that you'd be willing to share?
nothing really earth shattering, you know. Every once in a while, little strange things happen, but nothing really that anybody would want to hear about, you know. You want one more story?
I would love one more story.
Well, I was living in Levittown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my mother lived downstairs, and eventually I moved into the apartment upstairs. And I had Barbara. Barbara was living. She came in, and I had my nieces and nephews living there too. There was 9 people living in this house. And one night I'm sitting in the living room and I'm watching the television, and I could see into her bedroom from the couch and into the other room. And she comes into the living room. She was backing up, and I looked at her and I'm like, "What the hell are you doing?" You know, when people walk backwards, I notice things like that. I'm like, "What are you doing?" She says, "There's somebody in the dining room." So I get up and I'm on the second floor. There ain't nobody in the dining room. And I go in there and there was nobody in the dining room, but she described this person to me. And I'm like, all right, you know, okay, it's all right. Don't worry about it. It's nothing. You know, sometimes women, you know how they are. No offense. But so I go into the bathroom and I hear a loud noise and I hear a scream. So I'm like, what the hell? Now I go outside, and she had these garden gnomes, elementals, I call them. And I've been telling her for years, get them out of here, get them out. I don't want them here. She says, I like them. They're my garden gnomes. I like them. Well, one fell over. All right, all by its lonesome. And these were little heavy. These are little heavy guys. They didn't move around by themselves, you know. In the garbage they went. Finally, I got my wish. So I am sitting on the couch, and she's in her room, and I'm watching TV, and all of a sudden, 2 sets of boots come flying out of the closet. On the floor. Boom, boom, you know. She screams again. I had to laugh. That was my reaction. I laughed. The way she screamed, I laughed. I got up, I picked up the boots, I put them in the closet. I said, when the doors are shut, the boots stay in the closet. And I went back into the living room. So now I'm starting to get a little, you know, worried. This is the 3rd incident now I had in a very short period of time. What the heck's going on here? You know? So I stopped, I thought about it, and then I realized what happened. This happened in the month of March. I filmed the Demon Files in the month of March, 3 years prior. When I was doing religious provocation, there's no time frame in the spirit world. They revealed themselves to me in those 3 incidents.
Did anything else happen in the home?
That was it. I got the holy water out. I throw the holy water around. That was it. Now, I didn't witness the first 2 but I did see the boots with my own eyes. You know, two pairs. They didn't just fall out. They came out. You know, they were launched out of that closet. You know, and these are heavy fry boots.
Absolutely.
You know how heavy that. They make those boots out of tire. You know, the tires.
Yeah, they're heavy.
And they're heavy, and they hit that floor, bada boom.
Very strange.
You know, you notice things like that.
Yeah.
That's why you don't do religious provocation. It's nothing good comes from it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Ralph, thank you so much. I appreciate it. People want to find you or support you. Is there any way they can do that? Buy your book? Anything else? That's all.
No, I'm on Facebook. That's it. I don't have websites or, you know, anything like that. You can still get the book on Amazon, wherever you buy books, and that's it. You can see the Demon Files on Prime, and you can see Deliver Us from Evil, and on Prime or anywhere else.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to the LaserLion guys for making this possible. Thank you to my mom for connecting us. And above all, thank you, Ralph, for taking the time to do this.
It was my pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. When I'm back, we'll do another one. Thank you so much.
If you've made it to the end of this episode, you are clearly someone who understands that beneath every historical event lies a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. You're the type of person who knows that real history is more fascinating than any fiction, and we deeply appreciate that about you. I'll be honest. That's exactly why I personally invite you to sign up for Today in History, our free newsletter that goes beyond the surface of historical events. We dive into the stories that textbooks never told you, the secrets that challenge the course of nations, and the forgotten tales that deserve to be remembered. Let's continue this journey of discovery together. Take the conversation from your headphones into your inbox. Sign up now through the QR code or link in the description. Today in History, because every day holds a secret waiting to be revealed. Thank you for being part of our historical journey, and we'll see you next time.